This is a second day of hearings, beginning as Judge Cannon in Florida is weighing whether or not the appointment of Jack Smith is constitutional. Here's why. Jack Smith was no longer a government employee. He was no longer a U.S. attorney that was confirmed by the Senate. These special counsels sometimes are pulled out of the Department of Justice, and you can make an argument that that's a delegation by the Attorney General if they give them more if they give them more jurisdiction to cover than just their state, or in larger states, you have multiple U.S. attorneys for different regions because it's too big to handle. But he had already retired from that, was actually doing a position at The Hague, at the International Criminal Court, when he was pulled on to do this investigation of President Trump. So he was no longer confirmed by the U.S. Senate to do a job like this. And the question is, under our Constitution and the laws of the United States, can the Attorney General do this? Now, I will tell you, this was raised by Hunter Biden's defense team when he had a special counsel, as he does, coming after him. And the court dismissed it very quickly. It's never had even what it got Friday and today, Logan, which is an actual hearing by the judge. She said it was very interesting. She learned a lot. And today we're going to hear from both the defense team for former President Trump and the government. On Friday, it was arguments by kind of specialists and law professors. So the question is, can an official like this, can an attorney general just pick a lawyer and say, now you have universal jurisdiction, basically, the entire country, to bring any criminal charge you want against this individual? So you can go to Florida for a case, you can go to New York for a case, you can go to D.C. for a case, you can go to California for a case. I will tell you, lawyers, both left and right, defense attorneys, have been fighting this issue for years. Most recently, just so you think this isn't some right wing, how they try to paint Judge Cannon as outside the mainstream, then ask Hunter Biden's lawyers. I bet they wish they had Judge Cannon out in some of their cases, like California, where they raised this specifically in the tax case, where they said this special counsel has no jurisdiction. They are not appointed constitutionally. Now, Logan, to be fair and to be honest, this is as far as this has ever gotten. We've never even gotten hearings on this. So the fact that there were hearings Friday and that there are hearings today, to even have the judge consider saying that she believes that the appointment of Jack Smith is unconstitutional, that is the furthest we've ever gotten in this argument. Now, some of that is because we used to have independent counsels. That office got closed. That was what Kenneth Starr was. And because we kind of are in this new era where we keep appointing special counsel after special counsel after special counsel in the Trump years. And so, again, we've raised it before. Courts have not really had an interest in it. But, Logan, if she decides ultimately that this appointment is unconstitutional, I mean, not only is this case way behind because the classified documents, so we knew this wasn't going to be done before the election. This then puts into question, of course, the case out of D.C. Because, again, if the appointment is unconstitutional, you can't move forward with that case. So you'd have to take it to the appeals court. I have no idea what the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals would do. And then ultimately, I mean, my Lord, I know that the Supreme Court does not want to keep hearing these cases, but this is right up their alley.
Yeah,
I don't know how they would say no unless the 11th Circuit was just so clear. And the fact is, there haven't been other circuits that have taken that position. At the end of the Friday's hearing, Judge Cannon said, this has been very illuminating and helpful. Now, that statement, Logan, when you hear from both sides,
you don't want to lean into what it could mean, but you do kind of feel like it's telling.
Well, especially because she's taken so much heat. And I just want to remind you that Hunter Biden's attorneys, who are some of the best defense attorneys in the country, raise this very issue every time he's been brought up on charges by a special counsel. It's something defense attorneys, when dealing with special counsels, have been fighting for years. And this is a report from Julie Kelly from Real Clear Investigations, who's in the courtroom. The most revealing part of the hearing today relates to the funding for Smith's office. That's your taxpayer funding to the office. The special counsel has not released a financial report since September of 2023.
Oh, wow.
Well, if you were any other kind of, law firm or organization and you had issued a financial support, that's so government, right? It's like, because they don't care, right? You'll see in this description that money is so fungible, they just do not care. So since September 2023, that violates the 6-month reporting requirement, because that's like their FOIA, when they violate that all the time with us, and ultimately we have to take them to court, and that's what they want to do. So there's no there's no trouble for them to violate their own timelines, except for they get pushed, eventually. But then Cannon asked James Pierce, who is representing DOJ this morning, about the status of the report. He said the report was completed in March of 2024, but it is undergoing some sort of review process. So again, it was completed not on time, but you can't see it, Judge, because it's being reviewed in the bureaucracy. I think this is where you got to go, though. She drilled down on what she described as, which is even different than a U.S. attorney, the permanent and indefinite appropriation for Smith's office, that the funding is, quote, limitless, just like I was talking about with Mueller, how they put together these legal attack dog dream teams, because they can go to these New York firms who maybe a former prosecutor's made his way up to a managing partner at a defense firm in New York and say, hey, will you come and do this for 6 months, this prominent role? And and I can pay you enough. You can't do that if you're the U.S. government. They have like payrolls and all those different statuses
right,
you make.
It's a little less
GS
open.
roles.
Yeah.
So, but with a special counsel, they get these budgets. So what did the government say back when they said the funding is limitless? Well, the DOJ said that they have two examples in the law that permits sort of public funding. But when the judge then said these are really vague examples, and I don't think they survive a court challenge, interesting, the DOJ attorney quickly responded that the DOJ could always find, quote, an alternative funding source, and emphatically stated that the DOJ, quote, will fund the prosecution. The judge did not like that, expressing further concern at how easy it is for which the Department of Justice can just find more money whenever it wants to prosecute Americans. So this does not seem like a great start for the DOJ in their defense of the special counsel, and it's a different look at it. It's not just about whether or not they're constitutionally allowed, but also the funding source, why they get to just keep the money going, and how easy it was for that DOJ attorney to say, Logan, well, if you think it's not right for us to get the money this way, we'll get it from somewhere else. I mean, this is not costing billions. Judge Cannon will ultimately make a decision about this. That will not be the final say. If she says that the special counsel was or is unconstitutional and not provided by in the statutes. If that happens, the 11th Circuit will almost certainly take the case. It could end there if they dismiss and overturn Judge Cannon's decision. If they went along with it, I think the case ultimately has to go to the U.S. Supreme Court because we've seen the appointment of so many of these special counsels, and they're going to have to make that decision. So we're going to keep our eyes on that very carefully because, again, it'll affect Donald Trump the most in the short term, but in the long term, it affects so many battles. This is kind of how they weaponized the justice and legal system, was by getting these special counsels to be able to build out their own hit teams from private practice to go after him. That's what Mueller did. When we were representing President Trump, he went to private practice, former district attorneys, former U.S. attorneys, to build these teams that the government would not be able to usually hire. They'd say, I'll come and do it for a year. And they pay them a lot more. They'd have all these resources. So we're going to watch that very carefully. It's very important. It's a huge constitutional issue.